Welcome back to Zoographics. I'm your host, Cosmic Horror author and storytelling madman, Eric Malachite, and today's video was written by Quentin Burns, so be sure to show them some love in the comments as you deploy your likes, subscribe to the channel and ring that bell if you haven't, and share this video with someone who loves learning about dinosaurs and animals. Let's get to it. It was twilight in the oasis, and the sands were moving in. The small creatures scurried for cover, and the larger ones ran for high ground. She found Protoceratops in the next valley, making slow progress towards the hills. His bright crest gleamed through the smog of dust, calling her to spy. He was alone, lost from his herd, his heavy feet sinking in the sand. Thus encumbered, he made a likely target, bigger than her usual meal, as large as she and many times as fat. Her feet skated lightly over the dunes, and her sight was keen in the dimness. She was confident. Velociraptor, sharp of tooth and claw, had always prevailed over her enemies. She ambushed him from behind, throwing herself over his right flank and grabbing for his neck. He reacted faster than she had bargained for. He clamped her arm in his beak and, flinging his hand, pulled her beneath him. She kicked and clawed up at his belly, wounding him mortally. In doing so, she wrote her doom. He fell upon her, crushing her leg. She was trapped, her arm still bleeding in his mouth. His dying proaxums pushed them deeper into the earth. At last, he fell silent, but still the sands piled on. The sands alone bore witness to these events and kept their recording. It would be 75 million years before the record was found. 22 years after that, Velociraptor would become famous in the film Jurassic Park. But that image of her was a false one. Her very name, meaning swift robber, might be a lie. Who was she really, and how do we know? How do we read from bones and sand the story of her legendary battle with Protoceratops? Velociraptor's remains were found in Mongolia's Gobi Desert. Today, the Gobi is a seemingly desolate sea of sand, red cliffs, and roads that go nowhere, all baked under a relentless sun. Erosion sculpts the rock into castles and spires, revealing many pages in the Book of Time and exposing a vast graveyard of the world's best preserved fossils. 70 million years ago, this place was a lush, swampy realm of huge, beastly dinosaurs, preserved in the mudstones and lake-deposited sandstones of the Namek Formation. A few million years before that, in the age of Velociraptor, it was a desert once more. The lower, older rocks of the Diversity.jpg Formation tell of ancient wandering dunes. The red and white sandstone layers are marked with curved grooves called crossbeds, which represent the surfaces of drifting sand. Between the sandstones are layers of clay and shale, evidence of ephemeral lakes and ponds. That lost desert world was less extreme than today's, although the sands could be vicious. The Diversity Formation lacks plant fossils, so we have to imagine the shrubs and conifers huddled around oases. However, it did preserve a fabulous wealth of lizards, tiny mammals, and small, feathered dinosaurs. Bones are found in amazing condition, showing details like tiny grooves and pits where blood vessels and nerves once lay. Here, Velociraptor and Protoceratops were entombed, one day to become known as the famous fighting dinosaurs. Our knowledge of Velociraptor began in 1923 in the labyrinth cliffs of Bienzak. Because of the harsh conditions, expeditions in the Gobi have always been expensive. To make them possible, Mongolian paleontologists had to collaborate with foreign institutions. In 1920, the Mongolian Academy of Sciences appealed to the American Museum of Natural History. The resulting series of expeditions became one of the most famous events in paleontology. They found over 100 dinosaurs, including the first dinosaur eggs. It was the first scientific expedition to travel by car. A fleet of 150 camels crossed the desert carrying gas and supplies, while 8 motorcars ventured out and back in search of fossils. They were led by controversial figure Roy Chapman Andrews, the purported inspiration for Indiana Jones. He was a publicity-loving, Wild West-styled renegade who excavated using a pickaxe. Andrews used his charm to assemble a dream team of experts. There were 40 men and 1 woman. the photographer and filmmaker Yvette Borup Andrews, Roy's wife. Their expeditions resulted in an amazing trove of film and photographs as well as fossils. They also resulted in Andrews' divorce, a topic of intense interest to gossip columns of the time. Yvette claimed Roy had deserted her, leaving her behind in Beijing while he went on to Mongolia. Roy, who had once called Yvette ever his best assistant in the field, now lamented that women were trouble on expeditions. It was the team's other photographer, James B. Shackelford, who first stumbled upon Bienzak. Andrews described the moment in his uncomfortably titled book, The New Conquest of Central Asia. The cars were stopped at the southernmost point of what is now called the Djakta Formation when Shackelford wandered off. He soon found that he was standing on the edge of a vast basin, looking down upon a chaos of ravines and gullies cut deep into the red sandstone. Almost as though led by an invisible hand, he walked straight to a small pinnacle of rock on the top of which rested a white fossil bone. It was the skull of Protoceratops. Bienzak is a maze of red rock, its streets and ramparts cobbled with fossils. Andrews renamed it the Flaming Cliffs. It was in this place in August of 1923 that Velociraptor was discovered. Assistant paleontologist Peter Kyson found a skull, jaw, front claw, and hind foot. The find is a minor note in Andrews' book. He remarked that Velociraptor seems to have been a small, alert, swift-moving carnivorous dinosaur, much too late in geological time to be ancestral to birds, but they do parallel them remarkably in their almost wing-like hands and lightly built skulls. Andrews' last expedition was in 1930. For the next 65 years, Mongolia's alliance with the Soviet Union rendered discoveries in the Gobi all but unknown to the Western world. Velociraptor remained an obscure dinosaur until the 1990 novel by Michael Crichton, and the subsequent 93 Spielberg film Jurassic Park launched it to fame. Crichton based his velociraptors on the related but much larger Deinonychus. He chose to call them velociraptors because it was the better sounding name. Although I think personally that Deinonychus is a badass name. The Jurassic Park velociraptors were 6 feet tall and 9 feet long, with wide snouts, slit pupils, and featherless lizard skin. They were extremely clever and hunted in packs. It was an iconic image, and mostly wrong. The true Velociraptor was 1.5 to 2 meters long with a slender torso, about the size of a coyote. Its skull has a delicate, narrow snout full of sharp, backwards curved teeth. The head was 7 inches long with a large cranial vault and wide eye sockets. Its brain was big relative to its skull and body size, suggesting it was an active and aware animal. How do we picture what bones can't record? Velociraptor had large eyes, but were its pupils slit or round? In 2011, Lars Schmitz and Ryosuke Montani argued that analysis of dinosaurs' scleral rings could tell us how their eyes worked. Scleral rings are thin circles of bone in the eye sockets of dinosaurs, birds, and most lizards. They surround the cornea, making them a good proxy for corneal diameter, which tells how much light can enter the eye. Schmitz and Montani compared the scleral rings of living animals and sorted them into 3 categories: nocturnal, diurnal, and crepuscular. Then they extended their sorting system to extinct animals, including Velociraptor. According to their model, Velociraptor was probably nocturnal or crepuscular. If that is true, slit pupils would be an advantage. Nocturnal and crepuscular animals often have lenses with different bands, each focusing light at a different spectrum to improve their color vision. When circular pupils narrow, they can't use the outer bands, but with a slit pupil, they still can. Modern crocodiles have slit pupils, meaning they retain color vision in daytime and twilight. Schmitz and Montani's conclusions have been criticized, however, on the grounds of significant overlap between the 3 groups they described. Ring morphology in living diurnal and nocturnal birds may be too similar to give reliable predictions on the activity patterns of extinct species. The question of teeth is less murky. In Velociraptor's resting state, should we picture its teeth exposed or covered? We can answer by comparing its mandibles to living animals with and without lips. Crocodiles have tight bands of ligaments around their mouth, exposing their teeth. The edge of their jawbones are rounded and scattered with small holes where ligaments attach. Lizards have looser ligament bands, resulting in lips. Their jawbones are sharp and smooth, with fewer holes arranged in rows. Velociraptor's mouth looks more like a lizard's, with a neat row of ligament holes. Most probably, its teeth were covered. Finally, the big question: how feathered should we imagine Velociraptor? We know its arms were feathered because of a Velociraptor ulna. A bone of the lower forearm was found preserved with knobs similar to those on bird arms. On birds, these knobs anchor their wing feathers. To some extent, velociraptors had wings. A 2011 study by Denver Fowler proposed that dromaeosaurs, the family of carnivores bird-like dinosaurs Velociraptor belongs to, might have used their wings for stability flapping. That is, flapping to position themselves while capturing prey with their feet, in the same way that modern hawks and eagles do. Fowler's team theorized that this flapping motion could be the origin of flapping in birds today. We can't know for sure how extensive or voluminous Velociraptor's feathering was. In 1999, the related early Cretaceous Ornithosaurus was found preserved with impressions of 3 to 5 centimeter long feathers covering its whole body. Since then, many other dromaeosaurs have been found with evidence of full body feathering. Unfortunately, no feather impressions have been found with Velociraptor. To speculate, we can ask what feathering style would have best suited Velociraptor's environment. If the ancient Gobi had hot days and cold nights, which seems likely, it might have been advantageous for Velociraptor to have some fluffy patches and some unfeathered patches for thermal regulation. Modern-day vultures are bald with thick ruffs for this reason. Velociraptor may have been largely cloaked in feathers, with some exposed skin on its head or neck to keep cool. The American Dark Age leading up to Jurassic Park didn't mean there was nothing to know of Velociraptor during that time. Far from it. In the 1960s and 70s, a series of Polish-Mongolian expeditions returned to the Dejokta Formation, where they would discover one of the most significant fossils of the Cretaceous. The expedition was an unlikely team. Their leader, Zofia Kielan-Jaworowska, was trained in invertebrate marine paleontology. In the Cretaceous, Poland had been underwater. No museum in the country had a dinosaur skeleton, and even theory was scarce. Many works on dinosaurs had been destroyed in the Second World War. In her book, Hunting for Dinosaurs, Kielan-Jaworowska said it took a great deal of courage and even foolhardiness to embark on their quest. Her team was poorly equipped for the conditions of the Gobi, and 8 of the 15 had never even seen a desert. Kielan-Jaworowska was no stranger to risky ventures, however. She was a former medic in the Polish resistance, and had risked the death penalty to pursue her degree during a time when university education was illegal for Polish citizens. Now, in 1963, she became the first woman ever to lead a dinosaur expedition. Her courage and foolhardiness paid off. Their team uncovered more fossils than the Roy Chapman Andrews expeditions, and made their names publishing research from the Gobi. It was on their final venture, in August of 1971, that paleontologist Andrzej Solimski discovered the fighting dinosaurs. 30 miles west of Bienzak in the white sandstone of Tugrican Shira, he found the nearly complete skeletons of Velociraptor and Protoceratops still entangled in their final battle. The fossil is considered so significant because it preserves behavior. Decoding that behavior, however, was not straightforward. Many versions of the battle have been proposed. Did the dinosaurs fall into a swamp? Did a bank or cave collapse on them? Did they battle at all? Or was Velociraptor scavenging? The positions of the bodies refuted the scavenging theory. Velociraptor's legs are kicking upwards at Protoceratops's belly, and its arm is trapped in Protoceratops's beak. Analysis of sediment around the bones showed a structureless engulfing, ruling out cave or bank collapse. The size and texture of the grain suggested the foes had been buried by a sandstorm. Later Gobi expeditions uncovered similar burying events, oases that looked to have been struck multiple times, with skeletons frozen as though swimming through sand. Because of the fighting dinosaurs, Velociraptor is often cast as the traditional enemy of Protoceratops. However, our only record of attack was one that failed. As we shall see, Velociraptor's typical prey was probably smaller. Popular depictions show Velociraptor as a pack hunter, but there is no direct evidence. The famous American paleontologist John Ostrom thought Velociraptor's relative Deinonychus was a pack hunter because of shed teeth found among the remains of a 20-foot-long Tenontosaurus. There was also a finding of several Deinonychus skeletons together. However, they might have been scavenging, or as one paleontologist fancifully imagined, called by the smell of blood to a shark-like feeding frenzy. There have been no similar similar findings of Velociraptor or of any Gobi dromaeosaurs. How then can we learn Velociraptor's hunting strategy? We can learn how it moved from the shape of its bones, and from motion we can extrapolate behavior. Velociraptor's skull isn't strong, suggesting it didn't use its mouth to kill. Therefore, it hunted mainly with its limbs. It had barbs on its ribs called uncinate processes, which are also found on living birds and reptiles. These barbs attach to muscles that strengthen the ribcage and shoulders, muscles you'd expect of an animal dealing with stress on its arms. To determine the sources of stress, we can look at the range of motion available to Velociraptor's arms. In a 2006 study on dromaeosaurs, Deinonychus, and Bambiraptor, paleontologist Philip Center manipulated casts of the dinosaur's arm and hand bones to discover how they could and could not be used. Center found neither dinosaur could fully extend their elbows or raise their arms to be fully horizontal. At rest, their hands faced inward, not downwards. With arms and wrists extended, their hands would naturally turn up, meaning they could not grab anything while reaching out. They could, however, grab things close to their body with both hands, or against their chest with one hand. They could also swing, raise, and flap their arms for balance. Next, we come to the legs and feet. Velociraptor's lower legs and foot bones are much shorter than those of similar dinosaurs, meaning it had a short stride. Contrary to its name, it was probably not a fast runner, and therefore more likely to hunt by ambush than pursuit. Many paleontologists have imagined dromaeosaurs' sickle-clawed toe as their most fiendish weapon. Was it for slashing and disemboweling large prey, or perhaps for latching onto hides and climbing over them? In 2019, biomechanics expert Peter Bishop tested this hypothesis on a computer model of the muscles and bones in Deinonychus's leg. He found Deinonychus could transfer the most force with a bent leg. However, that force was relatively small, too small for disemboweling. Other parts of the foot could transfer more force and could kick powerfully. Bishop thought the claw was probably used for grasping small prey to restrain it, the same way living raptors use their talons. To put this all together, Velociraptor would have been best at ambushing prey from behind. It might have used flapping motions with its wings for positioning and stability, the way birds do.
More like a 6-foot turkey.
To put this all together, Velociraptor would have been best at ambushing prey from behind. It might have used flapping motions with its wings for positioning and stability, the way birds do, while capturing the animal in its sickle claw. From there, it could grab with its hands to kill or kick the prey to death with its feet. In January of 1990, Mongolia declared independence from the USSR. A few weeks later, the Mongolian Academy of Sciences reached out to the American Museum of Natural History. That June, a Mongolian-American expedition set out once again into the Gobi. Expedition leaders Mike Novacek and Mark Norrell had several goals. They wanted to learn more about the geology of the late Cretaceous to reconstruct the world in which Velociraptor lived. They were also after a missing page in the story of evolution, the origin of birds. John Ostrom had first noted the similarity between dromaeosaurs and birds in 1973. In 1986, Jacques Gauthier published an in-depth comparison that left little doubt. Raptorial dinosaurs and birds had too many shared traits for birds not to be dinosaurs. The idea had not yet disseminated into the public consciousness or into the realm of accepted fact. A 1992 documentary that followed the second Novacek-Norell expedition introduced it as an exciting new theory, which the team was hoping to prove by discovering more bird-like dinosaurs. The roads that took them through the Gobi were no easier to travel than in Andrews' time. Many had no signs and led nowhere. Their maps were bad, and the expedition was delayed by wrong turns and a series of 12 breakdowns. They were left with 2 weeks to work, but in those 2 weeks, they discovered an ancient oasis. They recovered a trove of theropods, 3-toed hollow-boned dinosaurs, including several velociraptors. Among them was a velociraptor specimen with the most complete brain case yet found, which Novacek deemed remarkably similar to avian brain cases. Novacek called their finds a cornucopia of evidence on the relationship between dinosaurs and birds, providing a wealth of material for comparison. Their specimens were used in research aiming to map the family tree. Although the exact story is still debated, velociraptors and birds have both been sorted into the clade of Mairaptors. Theropod dinosaurs characterized by certain skeletal similarities, such as an unusually shaped bone in the wrist. Novacek-Norell's expeditions were the first in a spree of dromaeosaur finds throughout the 90s that solidified Gautier's conclusions. Throughout his 1996 book Dinosaurs of the Flaming Cliffs, Novacek refers to birds as dinosaurs, specifically mentioning their close relationship to Velociraptor. The new vision of Velociraptor came 4 years after its launch to notoriety in Jurassic Park. Throughout Dinosaurs of the Flaming Cliffs, Novacek uses Velociraptor to introduce concepts with a recognizable face. He describes theropod dinosaurs as the clade to which meat-eaters like Velociraptor belong, and presents the theory that birds are theropods by noting their close resemblance to forms like Velociraptor. The Velociraptor ulna with the quill knobs was found in 2007. Because of the sudden series of changes from its most popular depiction, Velociraptor has become a symbol of humanity's shifting image of dinosaurs. Nowadays, it is considered general knowledge that dinosaurs were feathered, but general knowledge to some is still unknown to others. Out in the Gobi, there are no dinosaur books or TV shows available in Mongolian. Paleontology is not taught in schools, and some children who live near the cliffs of Bienzak believe dinosaurs are mythical. There are no signs or maps announcing them, and until recently, no museums. Mongolian paleontologist Bolortsetseg Minjin learned about dinosaurs from reading her father's books in Russian. She was a member of Novacek-Norell's 1996 expedition, where she went out on digs despite being hired as a cook. Now she works to repatriate stolen fossils and introduce Gobi locals to their dinosaurs. In 2007, she founded the Institute of Study of Mongolian Dinosaurs to inspire the next generation of Mongolian paleontologists, which opened a mobile museum in 2013. The bus full of fossil replicas travels thousands of miles between desert communities, hosting paleontology workshops for students of all ages. Roy Chapman Andrews' so-called conquest of Central Asia found no empty expanse to conquer. Humans have lived in the Gobi since the Stone Age. The desert may seem desolate, but that is only a face it wears. Our small, scurrying ancestors, once prey to Velociraptor, were at home in this desert 80 million years ago. The upper layers of sandstone in the Namakta Basin record the final days of the Cretaceous 66 million years ago, and the dawn of the Age of Mammals. The Age of Mammals is a fallacious title, however, because dinosaurs never left the Gobi either. It may well be the Age of Birds, since there are more living species of birds than mammals. Nowadays, the raptors fly high over the desert. The bearded vulture casts great shadows on the sands, its wingspan wider than Velociraptor was long. Its grasping three-toed claws, the sign of the theropod, mirror the footprints of ancient dromaeosaurs on the earth below. We know Velociraptor not only by the record in the rock, but by the stroke of the falcon's wing, the snap of the lizard's jaw, the watchful eye of the crocodile. For the present is always nearer to the past than we may think. I hope you learned something today, and if you dug today's video, be sure to deploy your likes, comment a dinosaur you'd like us to cover, subscribe to the channel and ring that bell, and share this video with someone who loves learning about dinosaurs and animals. I'm Eric Malachite, and we'll see you next time.